BMW and Mercedes-Benz have both prided themselves for innovation, style, performance. Sadly, one of these brands failed miserably in reliability. So much, in fact, I would be an idiot if I bought one today. I'm going to do a head-to-head comparison for like to like for cars, SUVs between BMW and Mercedes-Benz and offer up which one is the best and which one is the least reliable. And knowing what I know today, I'd have to be 3 eggs short of a dozen to actually buy one of those vehicles today. Let's get into it now. The first comparison is the BMW X5 and the Mercedes-Benz GLE go head-to-head in that mid-size SUV class. We know BMW now has twin-turbo V8 of 4.4 liters. You can also get a plug-in hybrid. You can also get the inline six, which I truly believe is a gem. And Consumers Reports loves them. As a matter of fact, the ratings of Consumers Reports have shown BMW to climb over previous years. And a lot of it has to do with that B58 3-liter turbocharged inline six-cylinder engine that BMW's been utilizing. That being said, I've owned an X5. I had an older generation diesel, and it was an M57 engine. It absolutely was a workhorse. But we had a few issues. We had air ride suspension problems. We had a bad fuel injector once. We had issues with the diesel exhaust fluid tank, which froze up a couple of times, and it was a very expensive fix. There was a variety of different random maintenance repairs, as well as a few check engine lights along the way for intake valve issues and PCV plugging off. But all in all, it was a pretty reliable vehicle that we managed to make about 140,000 miles on. It was still running great when we sold it, so I know they're built to last. Mercedes, on the other hand, unfortunately, they don't have an engine that goes really head-to-head with the B58. Let's be honest. The current generation of issues that we're seeing in both these key cars are chalked up largely to a lot of technology. And the GLE seems to suffer from a lot of the electrical issues. Weakness in some of the fit and finish. I've heard of the bolsters on the leather coming apart on the GLEs. I've also heard about the transmission possibly not shifting out of park, possibly not even downshifting, slowing down too far and then stalling. I've also heard of issues with a lot of problems in the overall drivability and the quality, the fit and finish, and the overall solidity just isn't as well made as the BMW. Now, the BMW, there's word lately as well in the X5 that they've got some problems with the transfer case. You know, with some miles and with some age, it starts to judder and buck and kick and starts to misbehave and then ends up resulting in a $6,000 or $7,000 repair, and it's usually outside of warranty. A little bit extra maintenance and service tends to fix that up, but air ride suspensions are something that can really hurt both these brands. They're both expensive to service and maintain, but from my own personal experience, BMW is largely better put together. It won't rust, it looks better, the plastics don't feel as cheap, there's less squeaks and rattles, but ultimately the GLE looks great. The interior is flashy, it just doesn't feel that quality. When you start driving and you hear those squeaks and clunks and rattles, you quickly realize that it's not quite the same. That's why ratings based on Consumers Reports, Mercedes ranks at 45 out of 100 for reliability, whereas the BMW X5 ranks at a vastly higher 82 out of 100. Now that said, the Mercedes GLE starts at a 64,000 and change, and the BMW starts around 68 grand. Some people might chalk it up to a slightly cheaper product, but it definitely feels cheaper according to my personal experience.
Cars mean more to you than just basic mode of transportation, and you want to join a community that actually cares about the fun driving experience? Exotic Car Play Place. Grab your merch just like this right down below, click and link. You're good to go.
Now, the next segment is the luxury compact SUVs. Here we have the Mercedes-Benz GLC, and as well we have BMW's X3. Both pretty solid products, very popular. You see lots of each of these brands driving around. I haven't owned either, but I've utilized both of these vehicles in long-term loaners, and I can summarize what I've personally experienced these vehicles. The GLC certainly has a very similar drivetrain like we have in our C-Class. It gives you a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, produces anywhere from 242 horsepower and slightly above, with the latest models, of course, with a mild hybrid, gets you up closer to 255 ponies. BMW, now you also have the X3, which you have a different drivetrain in there too. It's also a 2-liter turbocharged 4, called a B48, and guess what? Here's an unfair home game advantage because BMW has been coming up the ranks fast and furious, both with two engines. The B58, which I spoke of over in the X5, which is the 3-liter inline 6, but the B48 that you find as a standard engine in the X3, which is a 2-liter 4-cylinder, produces 255 horsepower out of the gates with a mild hybrid in the latest generation, and also gives you that wonderful ZF 8-speed automatic transmission, which easily outdoes the Mercedes-Benz GLC. The BMW ZF 8-speed is absolutely amazing. It's almost as quick as a dual clutch gearbox, but it also knows how you're driving in auto mode. It does a better job of predicting your nature, and it's a little more tuned to sport, rather than Mercedes transmission of the 9-speed is a little more tuned to feels a little more wallowy and a little slower and more slurred, unless you put it, of course, into the sport modes, but at which point it still just does not react in the same way. But in the BMW, you can go the X3 M40i, which gives you the B58 as well, and you can also go X3M, which is an absolute rocket ship on rails with over 500 ponies, and it's an absolute monster in performance. So they're both great vehicles if you're looking for something in that $50,000 price range, with $49,500 being the starting price of the Mercedes-Benz, and the BMW is closer to 51 grand. They both have you covered around 50K, and they both give you the base engine of the 2-liter, both with around 255 horse. But my own personal experience is the X3 seems better bolted together. Now, this latest generation isn't quite as nicely done as the older generations. The previous generation did feel solid. It still had a few buttons. It still had a few knobs. Now they're integrating more lights, more of that electrical flair, more tech, more touchscreen, more haptics, and it just feels a little bit more disconnected. It still feels a little bit up over on the Mercedes-Benz. Now the Mercedes, to look at it, if you're not driving and you do a quick pan across the dashboard, the Mercedes feels a little nicer that way. The style looks a little bit nicer and more classic. But with some age, again, what I've seen, I had some rentals that had about 40, 50, 60,000 kilometers on them. And let me tell you, the Mercedes had some squeaks. The BMW didn't. The B48 and the BMW were a reliable workhorse. Yes, you can get the odd issue, cooling pipes, of course, water pumps, thermostats. Those are areas, oil filter housing issues, those can come up and they will cost you some money. A little DIY and you can get a lot of those wrapped up yourself. Mercedes-Benz, I find some of the maintenance a little more accessible, a little simpler. What I like about the Mercedes-Benz, it actually has a dipstick, where BMW pretty much gave that up with the Dodo Bird. There are some aspects of doing maintenance yourself, especially on the driveway, a little simpler with the Mercedes. The overall solidity is not there with the Benz. It feels like there's body panels that want to snap loose, they want to come unglued, and we've had all kinds of random ghosty fault lights and codes, weird noise from the front end because it's an all-wheel drive system. And quite honestly, it just doesn't feel that well put together. There seems to be more unpredictable failures, and quite honestly, the BMW feels a lot better put together. It's quieter, less rattles, more predictable maintenance and failures. And guess what? Consumers Reports agrees with me, because according to CR, the Mercedes-Benz is rated at 40 out of 100 for reliability. And the BMW X3 ranks at about 63 out of 100 for overall reliability rating. So it's quite clear to me, it's quite clear to Consumers Reports, and it's quite clear to most other critics like Repair Pal as well as JD Power that most of this reliability tends to lean heavily, or slightly at least, towards the BMW. Mercedes-Benz just doesn't have the quality parts. To me, it feels like more of a shell of what it used to be 30, 40 years ago. Now, the next class to compare is the C-Class, which we own a coupe, and ours is a 2018. It's a W205. Of course, it's been a facelift, now a W206. But also, the BMW 3 Series is the direct competitor, also a compact sedan, and realistically not super reliable either. Now, I like the 3 Series, as most people, driving enthusiasts, do. They feature a host of engines. You get a turbo inline 4, turbo inline 6, and of course, the 3 Series does potentially give you the M3, which is the hot version with over 500 ponies, dual clutch, and a special order manual. So some really driving focused people would really tend to lean a lot more to the BMW. But okay, great. It's a better enthusiast car. But what about reliability? Where does that leave Mercedes? Well, Mercedes also had an AMG. Remember, they had that beautiful twin turbo V8, 4 liters previous with 500 ponies? That was a great car. But you also had the C43 in previous generations, which gave you that great 3-liter twin turbo V6, which truly was one of their hallmark engines. Mercedes actually had a great engine in there, but sadly, the latest generation of that AMG spin-off, or AMG Light, if you will, doesn't give you that same V6. Now they've supplemented it with a Turbo 4 as well as a hybrid. It's not the same product. Now, the Mercedes-Benz C-Class starts just under $50,000 and BMW is closer to $48,000. So in this segment, it seems like BMW is a slightly better value. But as this is one of the most popular segments for both of these brands, I want to break this right down because I've owned both of these. And currently, I still own an M5, and I currently own a Mercedes C-Class. But let's talk about, first of all, the 3 Series. I've had a few different 3 Series in my life. A couple of them were 4-cylinders, and they were ruthless. I had an inline 6, an NA engine, and I also had a twin-turbo inline 6, the N54. And I would say up into and including everything that was NA was absolutely bulletproof. Then I bought that N54, and it was a piece of crap. Nothing short. I'm not pulling punches. It is what it is. That was junk. I was under the hood almost every second week, and that car, if it wasn't a water pump or a thermostat, it was an oil filter housing. If it wasn't that, it was the intake gaskets. If it wasn't that, it was a couple of cooling pipes. Check engine light because of an O2 sensor. That thing just constantly bearing down on me with repairs. It was just a catastrophic nightmare waiting to happen. That said, we've had an X5 and that thing was ruthless. We've also had this M5, which is of course the S85 V10. And everybody says it's the least reliable of any car they've ever made, and yet it was far more reliable than our N54. The latest generation of 3 Series is much like the X3. Utilizes the same drivetrains, base 2-liter turbo 4. You can also step into the B58, and they're definitely popular for the driving enthusiasts. How about the C-Class? Well, we own a coupe, 2-liter turbo 4, just like the GLC, and of course, we've had issues. We've had issues with squeaks and rattles. We've had body panels pop off. We've had speakers pop out of the door. We have a front wheel noise as you turn, slow roll, and you turn the wheel, there's a weird noise, and it seems like it's coming from the front differential or transfer case. We can't even find it, and the dealer still can't figure it out. We've had a few random leaks, which were easy to fix, and a positive crankcase ventilation valve actually crapped the bed too. Fortunately, that wasn't under an extended warranty because that was a recognized failure of the brand, but they fixed it on their dime, and you know, it was one of those because it sounds like a very expensive proposition. On top of it, we constantly deal with these random ghosty faults related to ADAS systems. And it just comes and then it goes. And the dealer has taken a run at it a couple of times, recognized a loss of communication, some kind of a module fault. But when it was under warranty, they failed to bother fixing it. They kept pushing it off, resetting, keep pushing it off. But then once warranty ran out, they were more happy at that point to start suggesting replacing modules. Of course, on my dime. You know, that was definitely a heartbreak. We still own the car. We're still driving it. We like the car for what it is, but it's quite clear. Plastics, squeaks, rattles, weird codes, faults, of course, PCV. It's got its share of issues, and all for a car that only has barely 70,000 kilometers, 45,000 miles on it. What's wrong with that picture? BMW, on the other hand, has a product in my mind, especially with the B58 and the M340i. It was probably one of the most popular compact sedans right now in the luxury car segment, and a lot of it comes to the engine. It's tunable, it's reliable, and honestly has elevated BMW's reliability overall as a brand. That same engine they're using in the 3 Series, 2 Series, 4 Series, 5 Series, 7 Series. I mean, this is utilized through the whole lineup and many of their X models too. So it's clear that BMW has something figured out, and they're utilizing that engine. They're also using it in a Toyota Supra, as Toyota recognized it fits the platform and it was okay with that level of durability. That said, Consumers Reports ranks the C-Class, and I will definitely agree with this, 19 out of 100. That is an absolute devastating blow of reliability. And the BMW 3 Series ranks at a 59 out of 100 based on Consumers Reports, which isn't all that stellar either, but it's more or less considered average. So at this point, it's quite clear that the 3 Series, again, is heads and tails above the Benz. Another major class is the midsize luxury car, or sedan. So you've got the 5 Series BMW, and you've got the E-Class Mercedes. Now, AMG version versus the M5, you can flip a coin. I love both of those cars. They're both spectacular because they're hot engines and they go like a steaming demon. But I would be absolutely foolish if I went and bought a low trim level 5 Series. They're complex, air ride, electrical gremlins and glitches, and everything that we've experienced in our C-Class, I would expect to amp that up because now you've got a car that's far more advanced, far more tech involved, and you're just dialing up the issues that you're going to experience. Now, that said, on the 5 Series, they're not perfect either. You can get the 530, which is the 4-cylinder, you can get the 540, which is the 6-cylinder, or you can also get a M550, which is their hot twin-turbo V8. Some of their higher trim level vehicles, in my personal opinion, you go either with the M5 or you just go with a 540. Those are the sweet spots. You go with the 530, it's too much vehicle to haul around with a 4-cylinder. You go with the 550, you got all of the catastrophic maintenance associated with a twin-turbo V8. It's got a hot V. You know that? They put the turbos in the slot there, and that basically means all that extra heat, you're starting to melt plastic, wiring, and in earlier generations that were poorly shielded, you also had issues with valve guides because all that extra heat would just migrate into the heads, start breaking down the valve guides and the seals, and next thing you know, you had heavy oil consumption. Of course, you had issues with timing chains, fuel injectors, battery draw. Those were all big issues with some of the BMW 5 Series cars, but current generation shows that the sweet spot is that 540, or if you want the hot model, you got to go with the M5. Mercedes-Benz, again, I love the AMG E63S. It's a great car. From my own personal experience, a lot of the fit and finish isn't quite built the same way. BMW's plastics, the way they're put together, aren't amazing. It's not a vault, but they're 10 times better from what I've experienced and continue to experience. Actually, we have a really close friend of ours right now that currently owns an M340. I believe it's a 2021 model, and it's absolutely spectacular. He drives it daily, summer, winter, minus 40 temps to plus 40 temps. He uses it every single day, hauls material in it, drives it, short trips, long trips, and it hasn't let him down. At a $66,000 price tag for the base E-Class or about a $60,000 base price for the 5 Series, I mean, there's more value in buying the BMW, but what about reliability? Well, Consumers Reports has something really strict to say because Mercedes-Benz is rated at 34 out of 100, which is absolutely devastating. And come on, I'm looking for feedback. Anybody who owns a modern day E-Class, let me know down in the comments, what kind of experience have you had with yours? And as well, the BMW with the 5 Series is rated at 66 out of 100, which is actually pretty stellar. And the only reason it's that low has to do with the fact with the M550 and the M5s, which are higher maintenance costs, a little extra complexity, and some unexpected issues, air ride suspension, and it's a complex drivetrain. So that also brings it down. But if you get sort of an entry to mid-level point for both models, the BMW vastly outshines the Mercedes-Benz. And of course, we have to talk about EVs because that's the name of the game these days. EQB, EQE, EQS. And I've reviewed some of these vehicles on my other channel, and they drive nicely, but the reliability isn't quite there. BMW, on the other hand, utilizes an i4, i5, iX. They had the old i3. They've had a variety of kind of exercised a few different options, and now they're transitioning, same with Mercedes-Benz, into entirely new platforms, which is right around the corner. But currently what we know today with the models that we understand today, reliability goes one way and one way only. With the Mercedes-Benz ratings based on Consumers Reports for their electric vehicles, ranks at about 27 out of 100, loaded up with electrical gremlins, charging challenges, and even fitment of some of the interior components, means that doesn't necessarily hold up as well, and there's many more trips to the dealer with unexpected failures and odd quirks and glitches and alarms. Whereas the BMW versions, according to Consumers Reports, ranks around 78 out of 100, which it puts it vastly better over the average Mercedes-Benz in the EV segment too. They both have something to offer. They both look great. They drive wonderfully. Mercedes-Benz always has more of that comfort, relaxed driving experience. Regardless of whether you're buying an EQE, it feels softer than the X5. If you're buying, of course, an E-Class, feels softer and heavier than a 5 Series. You're buying a GLC, it feels a little bit more luxurious than a C-Class. You get the gist. It's kind of the consistency. It feels more luxurious and softer, whereas BMW tends to be more dialed in for the dynamic and the enthusiastic driving experience. If I had to buy brand new one of these cars in 2026, I'd be absolutely foolish if I didn't buy a BMW. That being said, right there, the only BMWs I would buy this year and the only Lexus vehicles I would buy, because that's another model we need to compare with here too. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.